After my sister failed to flirt with the pianist Matthew in public, she sent people to smash his piano, cripple his hands, and imprison him in a villa, turning him into a canary. Matthew almost lost his life. I rescued him, healed him, and accompanied him during his rehabilitation. Finally, his hands recovered, and his piano performance made him famous. I stroked my belly, thinking that the hardships were over. But on the day my sister got married, he sent me abroad. If it weren't for you, how could I have been separated from Linda? It turned out that he had an emotional disorder and had already fallen in love with Linda, who had abused him. I saved him, but he hated me for breaking up his relationship. In the end, I was sexually assaulted by vagrants one after another and died a miserable death in a garbage dump. When I opened my eyes again, I was back on the day Matthew was flirted with and humiliated at the banquet. Hello, everyone. Welcome to my channel. Subscribe us to read wonderful novels every day. Now the story begins. After being reborn, at Linda's birthday party, I saw Matthew, who was 20 years old. The once cold and aloof teenager was sitting there like a plaything, with a silver chain around his slender neck, his face pale and fragile. Look at my dog. Isn't he beautiful? He's so obedient. Linda raised the corners of her lips and stroked Matthew's white chest with her fingertips. Everyone sneered, and their eyes on Matthew were contemptuous yet lingering. Except for me. Sister, why aren't you laughing? Linda approached and called me mockingly. Obviously, I was the biological daughter of the Anderson family, and Linda was just a substitute adopted by my parents during the years I was abducted. But when I was finally recognized, they were reluctant to send Linda away. They even ignored me and favored her. She was fearless and often humiliated and played tricks on me in front of others. I tasted the dirty water from the mop bucket at school. I endured the pain of the stapler going through my earlobe. So this time, everyone habitually fell silent, waiting to see me make a fool of myself. Only Matthew turned to look at me, a trace of expectation flashing through his emotionless eyes. At the beginning, on a whim, my father wanted to get the title of a philanthropist. So he donated several schools to poverty-stricken areas and picked out a few orphans to bring to the city and sponsor their studies. Matthew was the most outstanding one. Not only was he good at studying, but he also played the piano very well. I liked the clean aura about him. However, Matthew's appearance was too eye-catching, and Linda also took a fancy to him. Unfortunately, Linda was spoiled and willful. If she couldn't get what she wanted, she would destroy it. So when Matthew refused her, she flew into a rage, sent people to smash his piano, cripple his hands, and imprison him in a villa, making him a canary. She even tied a dog chain around his neck and would bring him out to humiliate him in public from time to time. In my previous life, I had a crush on Matthew. When I saw that he was being tortured by Linda and almost lost his life, I couldn't bear it and saved him, healed his hands, and gave him a new life in the world of the piano. I accompanied him through the darkest days, thinking that the hardships were over. Unexpectedly, on the day he learned that Linda was getting married, he took me abroad. If it weren't for you, how could I have been separated from Linda? Marina, I hate you. It turned out that he had an emotional disorder and had already fallen in love with Linda, who had abused him. I saved him, but he hated me for breaking up his relationship. He left me in a poor alley in a foreign country, allowing me to be sexually assaulted by vagrants one after another. In the end, I was stabbed to death and thrown into a garbage dump. At that time, I was already pregnant with Matthew's child. The child turned into a pool of blood under me. The heavy breathing, the sticky touch, the broken legs, it was all still vivid in my mind. I gritted my teeth. At this moment, I only wished I could go up and tear that ungrateful wretch to pieces. Seeing that I ignored her, Linda came over and shouted in a voice that only I could hear. Sister, does it hurt to watch the person you like being tortured like this? You see, Mom and Dad don't want to make your existence public. You should know that no one in this family welcomes you. If you're willing to get out of City A, I'll let Matthew go. So that's how it was. Although I wasn't loved by my parents, as the real daughter, I was still a big threat to Linda. She was afraid that one day, without noticing, I would climb higher than her. I was suddenly curious. If Matthew knew that he was just a tool for Linda to threaten me, what would his expression be? I smiled calmly. Sister, do whatever you want with your dog. It has nothing to do with me. Linda was stunned. Matthew, who had been silent, suddenly changed his expression and his eyes turned red. He struggled and tried to walk despite the chain around him, his voice hoarse. Marina. But the moment he got up, he fell to the ground. Oh, that's right. At this time, because of the long-term abuse, he was so weak that he didn't even have the strength to walk. The young masters and ladies in the banquet hall looked at him coldly and burst into mocking laughter. For them, this was something they were used to. No one would offend the apple of the Anderson family for Matthew, who was just a plaything. Matthew fell heavily, but as if he didn't feel the pain, he frantically crawled towards me. Finally, at my feet, he opened his mouth tremblingly. It's me, Matthew. Marina, don't you want me anymore? In one dark night after another, he pressed me against the French window like a madman, roughly biting my shoulder, and the crush carried a destructive desire engraved in his bones. At that time, I thought that he was trapped in those dark days and wanted to enjoy the pleasure of conquest from me. So, I didn't complain and even took the initiative to accept it. Now I understand that he just wanted to torture me. A feeling of nausea welled up in me. I involuntarily took a step back and forcefully pushed Matthew away. And I warned Linda, can't you keep your dog in check? He dirted my clothes. Matthew opened his eyes wide, and the expression on his face was almost blank. He seemed not to believe that I would say such a thing. After all, before he was imprisoned by Linda, we had a hazy and ambiguous relationship. This was also the reason why I saved him in my previous life. I thought he loved me. But who knew that later, he would fall in love with the person who had tortured him. Linda lost face and kicked Matthew several times in a fit of anger, scolding him fiercely. Matthew, you're such a lowly dog. After scolding, Linda opened a bottle of red wine and poured it over his head. His wet black hair hung over his forehead, and the red wine flowed down the corner of his eye, adding a bit more of a fragile and cold beauty to him. From beginning to end, I watched coldly. At this moment, a deep and mocking voice came from outside the door. It seems that you had a lively time while I was away. The banquet hall fell silent immediately. It was Nathaniel who came. He was wearing a well-tailored black suit, but he had a neat and unruly red hair. The absurd and conflicting combination unexpectedly made him look abstinent yet amorous. He was the heir of the Prescott family. Since university, many people said that he and Linda were a perfect match. Linda immediately put on a smiling face and took Nathaniel's arm, acting coquettishly. I thought you wouldn't come, brother Nathaniel. But Nathaniel lazily pulled his arm out. Just tell me what you want. Don't be so touchy-feely. But Linda didn't care about his distance and was still full of him in her eyes. I sneered in my heart. See, Matthew, even if it wasn't me, you could never be with Linda. In Linda's eyes, how could a disabled person compare with Nathaniel, the favored son of heaven? I sneered and glanced at Matthew, but I saw that he didn't care about Linda and Nathaniel and was staring intently at my belly. A strange feeling welled up in me. Could it be that he was reborn too? At that moment, a chill spread from all over my body, making me tremble. But at this time, a card was suddenly stuffed into my hand. I looked up in a daze. I saw that Nathaniel had sent Linda away before I knew it. At this moment, from an angle that others couldn't see, he was slightly curling his lips, and his magnetic voice fell softly into my ear. Miss Marina probably doesn't want to be replaced. Right. Do you want to talk? Come and find me here. I held the room card and laughed softly. Mr. Nathaniel, you don't want to talk to me in bed, do you? Unexpectedly, although Nathaniel seemed unruly, he was actually quite innocent. He lifted his eyelids lightly, his expression calm, but the tips of his ears turned slightly red. if you like to talk in bed. Sister, in my previous life, I had very limited interaction with Nathaniel. In my memory, he didn't wear formal clothes very often. He always looked lazy, and he had an ear stud in his ear. He was a cynical younger brother, but I didn't expect that after my death. He was the only one who rushed out to avenge me. After I died in my previous life, my soul didn't disappear directly but was trapped beside Matthew. Matthew fabricated a series of lies. He played the role of a loving boyfriend and said that I had an accident abroad. When he mentioned my name, he choked up several times. Even at my funeral, he played the song I loved the most when I was alive, pretending to be affectionate. Everyone said that Matthew loved me to death. Only I felt extremely disgusted. But in my soul state, I couldn't expose him at all. Coincidentally, Nathaniel appeared. He interrupted Matthew's performance of pretending to be affectionate at the funeral, called a group of reporters, and projected a video of Matthew cheating on me with Linda while I was alive, making Matthew lose face in front of the camera. He also took out evidence of Matthew colluding with vagrants to murder me abroad. I didn't understand. From the news of my death to Matthew bringing my ashes back to the country and pretending to hold a memorial service. It was only 10 days in total. Nathaniel almost didn't sleep and found out all of this. Finally, with red eyes, he got into a fight with Matthew, and they both got injured. The venue was in chaos. I wanted to help him, but my soul became weaker and weaker, and my consciousness became fainter and fainter, until I was completely swallowed up by a white light. When I opened my eyes again, I was reborn and returned to this year. At this time, Nathaniel had already left, leaving me with this room card. So, Nathaniel, what on earth are you thinking? That night, I used the card to open the door of room 1206. The light was dim, and the faint smell of cedar wafted in the air. Nathaniel was standing in front of the French window, wiping his wet hair. Hearing the sound, he lazily raised his eyes. "You're here, sister." His tone was familiar, as if he was waiting for me to come home. I stood at the door and looked at him, not knowing where to look. This was a body completely different from Matthew's. Matthew was thin and his skin was white. After being imprisoned, his health wasn't good, and he had a faint sickly beauty. And Nathaniel, whether it was his abs with water droplets winding down or his slightly rolling Adam's apple, it all showed his vigorous. I paused and averted my eyes. Nathaniel smiled. "Actually, you can come closer and take a look. I don't mind. After all, in the future, I will belong to you." I took a step closer to him and said, "Don't you give room cards as gifts to every woman you meet?" Nathaniel sighed and said helplessly, "Meeting for the first time. We've met 5 times. Why don't you remember me?" Seeing that I didn't move, he came over and looked down at me. The old man said that for the family marriage, I have to marry the daughter of the Anderson family. Linda is a fake. You are the real daughter of the Anderson family. I raised my eyebrows in surprise. Linda and my parents had always kept my identity a secret from the outside. "How did you find out?" After asking, I glanced down and was involuntarily attracted by his waistline. But Nathaniel didn't give me time to react. "Sister, your eyes are too naughty." After saying that, he directly put his arm around my waist. After experiencing the miserable death in my previous life, I instinctively feared such intimate contact. I shuddered involuntarily. Nathaniel seemed to sense something and actually soothed me. "Sister, don't be afraid. I won't hurt you. I won't let others hurt you either. If you don't like it, I can stop." His eyes were bright, and there was a trace of distress in his tone. Seeing that I didn't push him away, Nathaniel tentatively kissed me. His kiss was not as forceful and overbearing as Matthew's. It was more like a lingering kiss, with a hint of flattery. I actually didn't resist, and even thought he was a good kisser. I pushed him away, gasping for breath. My legs were so weak that I could barely stand, so I leaned on his shoulders and asked, "What are you doing?" Nathaniel looked at me and kissed me again. The moment I fell onto the warm blanket, he pecked at my ear. "Marry me." Sister, with the position of Mrs. Prescott, it will be easier for you to do what you want. Instead of liking that useless Matthew, you might as well try doing it with me. Seeing that I didn't respond, he added a few more words. Of course, if you don't want to, it's still not too late to stop now. I looked up at him. What a handsome face. Wasn't he much more pleasing to the eye than Matthew? I chuckled, grabbed his hand, turned over, and pressed him underneath me when his eyes were filled with hidden emotions. Until taking a bath, Nathaniel still wasn't satisfied. On the bed, on the sofa, on the ground, on the desk, there were traces of lovemaking everywhere. When he hugged me again, I couldn't help but feel a little startled. Again, I gave Nathaniel a helpless look. He panted in my ear, "Sister, just bear with it a little longer." I lay trembling on Nathaniel's shoulder and looked at myself with red eyes in the mirror. Suddenly, I laughed. A top-notch hunter often disguises as prey. I certainly knew that Nathaniel had met me 5 times before this. The first time was the day I was recognized back into the Anderson family. I was crying in the yard, and he was standing beside Linda, glancing this way from a distance. The second time was during the university sports meeting. I accidentally knocked over his water with a basketball. The third time was when he was pestered by a girl, and I walked coldly between him and the girl. The fourth time was at the school New Year's party. I deliberately picked the boy beside him as my dance partner. The fifth time was at the cocktail party. I deliberately mistook him, covered his eyes, and asked him to guess who I was. The moment he grabbed my palm, I pulled away pretending to be flustered and said I had mistaken someone. Each time was brief and hasty, but it was enough to be the beginning of love. Nathaniel was 2 years younger than me, but because of his outstanding grades, he skipped 2 grades and went to the university with me. I laid out sweet baits step by step. I originally wanted to use him to take back what belonged to me, but in my previous life, after Matthew appeared, I gave up the plan. I thought that Nathaniel wouldn't take me seriously, and it was still too late to stop. After all, Linda had been chasing after him for so long, and he was as cold as ice. Unexpectedly, he was much more innocent than I thought. I just flirted with him a few times, and he said he wanted to marry me. Remembering in my previous life, when Nathaniel learned of my death and avenged me, the way he was covered in blood, I hugged him tighter, and my eyes were filled with mist. Nathaniel immediately became nervous. "Why are you crying?" I raised my head slightly, making my tears look more beautiful. "Nathaniel, I'm not a good person. Have you thought it through? Do you really want to marry me?" After experiencing my previous life, I certainly knew what expression of mine was the most attractive. Sure enough, Nathaniel felt extremely distressed. He leaned close to my ear. "Sister, you can be even worse." After a pause, his tone was a bit jealous, and he tentatively said in a trembling voice, "Or, do you still like Matthew?" I held his face and laughed through my tears. "Nathaniel, don't mention that spoil sport when we're doing this." He was stunned for a moment, and his ears turned red as he kissed me. His voice became hoarser, and he became more vigorous. "Okay." Sure enough, tears were the best weapon against men. After that day, Nathaniel took me to live in his villa. "If you don't like the decoration here, you can design it yourself, and I'll get a new set of furnishings." I was surprised. "How do you know I can design?" Nathaniel smiled. "I also know that you can play the violin. Your wish is to hold a solo concert. If you need it, I can contact an agency for you and let you stand on the stage." Wait. He seemed to know a lot. Yes, I could play the violin. I had always dreamed of having a stage where I could attract attention. However, in my previous life, to take care of Matthew, I gave up everything. After Matthew's hands were disabled, every time he watched me play the violin, his eyes were so gloomy that it made me sad. He couldn't accept that he couldn't play the piano anymore, while I could still pursue my dream. So, I gave up the violin for him and wholeheartedly accompanied him to seek medical treatment for his hands, until he recovered from his injuries, became famous as a pianist, and I became his manager who took care of everything for him. In the end, when I lost my value of being used, he completely threw me into the garbage dump. Those pains were still vivid in my memory. And in this life, Nathaniel had efficiently arranged an agency for me. Yes, I should pick up my dream again. Suddenly, I became very busy. On Linda's side, it seemed that she was addicted to abusing Matthew. Since I didn't take the bait at the banquet last time, she went even further. Sister, look at Matthew's dying appearance. Don't you feel sorry for him? She tied Matthew to the bed and put a collar on him. She even took off his clothes and took photos of him from various angles and sent them to me. In the photos, Matthew looked cold and humiliated, looking weak and pitiful, with a strange sickly beauty. At first, I ignored her, but she wouldn't give up. I know you like him. If you don't want him to be played to death by me, you'd better take him far away. You know what? When Matthew had a fever and was unconscious, he was still calling your name. Actually, you've had an affair with him for a long time. Right. Why are you still pretending? As more and more photos and short videos came, I knew she was getting anxious, but I didn't mind provoking her a little more. The dog you raised really has a good figure. Since his clothes are off, aren't you at a loss if you don't sleep with him? The photos are so wonderful. Do you want me to show them to your brother Nathaniel? As soon as she heard that I was going to send the photos to Nathaniel, Linda immediately became angry. Marina, you're being shameless. Do you think brother Nathaniel will care about you? I smiled. Guess. You dare. Marina, you'll regret it. After that, Linda and Matthew finally settled down for 2 months. But I knew they weren't idle. I bribed Linda's nanny. The nanny sent a message saying that although she didn't know how Matthew had convinced Linda, it was amazing that Linda stopped abusing him. On the contrary, she began to care about Matthew's body. She took him around to see doctors. She even let Matthew show up in front of my father and get involved in business matters. Finally, at the business dinner where the Anderson family secured the land in the southern part of the city, I saw Linda with a bright smile and Matthew in a suit, looking noble and distant. They came down the stairs from the second floor and stood side by side, looking like a perfect match. Linda smiled and leaned in front of me, provoking me with a smile. Sister, see, Matthew has now become Dad's right-hand man, and I recommended him. From now on, there will be no place for you in this family. I glanced at Matthew, but I saw that Matthew was also staring at me with gloomy eyes. Linda immediately stood between us. Sister, you must regret not taking him away. Right. Otherwise, your life would definitely be better than it is now. At least you wouldn't have to carry a violin around and run around with that little performance fee of yours. TSK. It's not even enough to fill you. I sneered. A dog is a dog. Just because it puts on clothes, can it become a human? Linda choked and rolled her eyes coldly before leaving. Come to think of it, Matthew couldn't have caught my father's attention for no reason. In my previous life, he was just a pianist and didn't show outstanding business skills. How did he help Ray swallow up the land in the southern part of the city? I was distracted for a moment. When I came back to my senses, I realized that only Matthew and I were left here. Matthew was staring at me with red eyes. I turned to leave, but he called out to me with great restraint. Marina, don't you want me anymore? That strange sense of familiarity appeared again. However, as soon as he called my name, he suddenly turned his head and coughed violently. Although he was dressed in a suit, he couldn't hide his sickly face. After all, he had been abused by Linda for so long, and his body couldn't be cured in just 2 months. I watched him with schadenfreude. In my previous life, to treat his illness and injuries, I not only spent money and effort but also studied cooking and traditional Chinese medicine diet therapy. It was like unraveling a cocoon to slowly take care of his body. Now, Linda was eager to make him look good in front of my father. And naturally, she didn't have the patience. She would only give him strong medicine. After watching his sick and embarrassed appearance enough, I turned around indifferently. But he stepped forward again and stubbornly grabbed my wrist. spilling champagne all over the place. Marina, you were reborn too, right? Otherwise, you would have taken me away that day. You wouldn't have the heart to leave me with Linda. His voice choked up, and his tone was more humble than I had ever heard. He was almost flattering me. I pulled my wrist away forcefully and couldn't wait to rush to the bathroom to wash my hands. Matthew saw the disgust in my eyes, and his face turned pale. He looked at me with a broken look in his eyes and explained hoarsely, Marina, do you know about Stockholm Syndrome? In my previous life, I didn't mean to hurt you. I was just sick. My mental state was messed up, and I couldn't figure out my true feelings. Every day after losing you, I've been regretting it. Later, I turned myself in, and the police hired a psychologist for me. Marina, my heart disease has been cured. I don't love Linda at all. I hate her. Give me a chance to make up for you. Okay. I don't need you to accompany me to the hospital for treatment. I'll make a lot of money in the future and give you a good life. You. Cough. His tone became urgent, and he frowned in pain and coughed again. It seemed that his body had been completely ruined by Linda. This time, I couldn't hold back and slapped Matthew hard. Matthew, you make me sick. I had died once, and his regret was of no use. When I called him crying for help, he didn't regret it. When I was pinned down by vagrants abroad, he didn't regret it. When I was left dying in the garbage dump, he didn't regret it. After I died and was reborn, he came to say he regretted it. The anger in my heart was intense, and the hatred in my heart was about to break free. However, before I could go hysterical, I heard Linda's shout, Marina, what are you doing? Even when you beat a dog, you have to consider its master. How dare you hit Matthew? You bitch. Hearing the commotion, she ran over and stood in front of Matthew domineeringly. I stood up coldly and retorted, can't even take care of your own dog. Linda, besides relying on our parents' favor to do whatever you want, what else are you good for? Linda was so angry that she raised her hand to hit me. I didn't indulge her anymore. I directly grabbed her arm and smashed a wine glass. If you say something I don't like again, this glass will be stabbed into your face. Linda's face changed immediately. The little followers beside Linda couldn't stand it and spoke up. Marina, you're so shameless. You're just an adopted daughter of the Anderson family. Linda was kind enough to let you, a country bumpkin, attend the banquet. How can you bully her like this? After the words fell, the crowd whispered. The pointing and contempt were all on me, and someone stood behind to take a video. Linda wasn't afraid anymore. She looked at me fearlessly, and her smug face couldn't be hidden. I sneered disdainfully and asked rhetorically, oh, who do you think is the adopted daughter? Of course it's you. The Anderson family adopted you. An orphan. You've been eating and drinking from the Anderson family all these years. You're not the adopted daughter. Is Linda? After hearing this, I laughed even harder. That's not certain. Before I could finish, Linda interrupted me in a hurry. Shut up. Where are the security guards? Hurry up and throw her out. After the words fell, several security guards squeezed through the crowd, and one of them came up to pull my arm. I was about to wave him away when I was suddenly pulled back and fell into a warm embrace. Nathaniel gently hugged me, his chest heaving, and his voice was low. Who dares to touch my woman? For a moment, the scene was silent. Someone gasped, is this Mr. Nathaniel's girlfriend? Linda stood there blankly, looking at me in a daze, and then asked pitifully, Brother Nathaniel, what do you mean? Nathaniel glanced coldly at Linda. Get out of the way. Linda wasn't willing and wanted to make trouble again, but as soon as she saw the person who came out behind Nathaniel, she completely wilted. The founder of the Anderson family, Ray. That was my biological father. Beside him stood a beautiful woman, my biological mother, Angela. Their eyes lightly swept over Linda and finally settled on my face. I pretended to be longing and called them obediently. Dad. Mom. My father nodded at me. The corner of my mother's mouth lifted into a faint smile, which was barely kind. The people on the scene had different expressions, especially Linda, whose eyes were full of hatred. The couple walked onto the platform. My father held a glass of red wine, his expression calm but full of power. Since everyone is here, I'll introduce my daughter to you by the way. Linda's face turned pale instantly. Her little follower leaned in and asked, "What's going on? Is your father confused? Isn't his daughter you?" Linda gave her a fierce look. "Get lost." My mother stood beside my father and gracefully extended her hand to me. She was wearing a high-end dress, and every strand of her hair perfectly showed her noble and dignified identity. When she waited for me with a smile in her eyes, it was as if she was waiting to display a commodity. I calmly walked forward at her summons. When I passed Linda, I said in a low voice, "Excuse me, my dear sister." Linda's eyes almost burst into flames. Yes, what she used to like and rely on has now all belonged to me. Even though Angela and Ray, these parents, still can't help but be partial to her. Now, they have to admit my existence. Otherwise, the cooperation between the Anderson family and the Schur family will fall through. That's a project worth billions. In the face of money, sacrificing Linda, this adopted daughter without blood relation, is nothing. Linda finally realized my plan and asked gloomily, "It's you, Marina. Since Mom and Dad don't like you, you deliberately seduced brother Nathaniel. Right, you bitch. What kind of ability is this?" I had a bright smile on my face, but when I passed by her, I secretly leaned into her ear. Why isn't this considered an ability? There is too much injustice in this world. I was abducted when I was a child. After being found, I couldn't be recognized by my parents, clearly their biological child. I had to bear the reputation of an adopted daughter, be ignored by my parents, be abused by the one who occupied my place, and be betrayed by the one I truly loved. Even if I was reborn, it would be difficult for me to compete with my capitalist parents on my own. Nathaniel is my best partner, taking control of a man's heart and making him work for me. Why is that not possible? Under the gaze of everyone, I walked forward step by step and took Mrs. Angela's hand. "Mom." Mrs. Angela's expression was flawless, and there were even faint tears in her eyes. She played the role of a loving and gentle mother very well. "Before, we made a mistake about Marina and Linda's identities. Actually, Marina is our biological daughter. Marina, you've suffered." I hugged her, in this scene of deep mother-daughter affection. Who would have thought that just the day before, when I went to negotiate with them and forced them to publicly acknowledge my identity in front of everyone with a cooperation project worth billions. She was hysterical, scolding me for being ignorant and saying that a selfish bitch like me didn't deserve to be her daughter. In the deathly silence of the crowd, Nathaniel was the first to clap. "Congratulations, Uncle Sue. You've finally agreed to recognize your biological daughter." The sarcasm in his words was obvious to everyone, but Ray still calmly held my hand and played his part. "Marina, you've been wronged all these years." I looked at Linda. She was staring at me with a look that wished she could skin me alive. But she was quick to react and knew to pretend in front of everyone. She came over, forcing a smile, and affectionately took my hand. "Sister, I'm really happy for you. From now on, we're family." I looked at Linda calmly and smiled at her angry but silent expression. Family. Yes. After all, the biological daughter and the adopted daughter are both Mom and Dad's daughters. For the wedding of Nathaniel and me, I'll need you, my dear sister, to be the bridesmaid. There was an instant commotion below. After the surprise, everyone understood. In this wealthy circle, which family doesn't have some drama? Those who understood. So, one by one, teasing glances landed on Linda. They were waiting for Linda's excuse and resistance. After all, Linda had been domineering all these years and always claimed to be Nathaniel's fiancée. All the acting was over. After that, many people came to toast me. Among them were those who had given me dirty looks and sneered at me before. This circle was like this. One day the mansion rises, and the next day it collapses. Profit comes first. As long as there is money and profit, enemies can become friends. I watched all this coldly. After dealing with it, I finally pinched the bridge of my nose wearily. Nathaniel asked me if I was tired. Before I could shake my head, Linda rushed up and asked Nathaniel tearfully, "Brother Nathaniel, what do you take me for? We grew up together. And in the end, you actually want to marry this bitch Marina." Before Nathaniel could speak, my father walked over with a dark face and warned her in a low voice, "What are you making a fool of yourself for? Aren't you ashamed? It's not your place to comment on your sister's marriage to Nathaniel." Linda looked at him in disbelief. She had been taking Matthew to see a doctor in other places some time ago. She didn't know about the deal between me and my parents, so she couldn't understand how her father, who had doted on her before, could say such harsh words. "Dad, didn't you promise me that you would only recognize me as your daughter and let me marry brother Nathaniel in the end? Why are you recognizing her now? As long as you don't agree, she can't marry in." "Mom, didn't you say that I'm your favorite daughter? Since that's the way it is, tell them that the one who will marry into the Prescott family is me. If you really let this bitch marry brother Nathaniel, do you want me to be laughed at by everyone? Aren't you afraid that they will laugh at you too?" Linda became more and more excited as she spoke. She even forgot that Nathaniel, the other person she was talking about, was standing beside me. Nathaniel's face turned colder and colder. My parents' brows were furrowed deeper and deeper. Finally, my always dignified mother couldn't bear it anymore and slapped Linda. "Shut up. Who are you threatening?" My mother used a lot of strength for this slap. Half of Linda's face turned red immediately, and blood oozed from the corner of her mouth. She stood there in a daze and then burst into tears. "Fine. You don't want me in this family. Right. Then I'll leave. You can just pretend that you don't have a daughter like me." Linda raised her foot and ran out. But she still didn't give up and kept paying attention to what was going on here as she ran. However, the little princess of the capital circle who used to be the center of attention now had no one to stop her and give her a way out. Linda broke down and came back, begging softly, "Mom, you really don't care about me anymore." My mother, Mrs. Angela, opened and closed her lips. She was obviously moved, but she still turned her face away and ignored her. I sneered and mocked. "Sister, you can go to the orphanage to find your mother. Maybe she can stand up for you." Linda was so angry that she tried to hit me again. This time, Nathaniel and Matthew both took action. Nathaniel pulled me into his arms. Matthew raised his hand to stop Linda. Linda's face turned pale, and she glared at Matthew unwillingly, sneering angrily. "What? You're protecting her too? Do you know what she said about you when I sent her the photos and videos of you almost dying? She said you were a dog and that you deserved to die." Matthew's eyes were red, and he said in a trembling voice, "I owe her this." As he spoke, he looked at me unwillingly and almost begged, "Marina, don't you have anything else to say to me? You used to like me so much." "Yes, I do," I interrupted him. Matthew's originally dull eyes lit up instantly, but I laughed. "I wish you would die soon." Matthew froze, his expression almost disbelieving, and he swayed on his feet. But I was too lazy to look at his pitiful appearance and pulled Nathaniel away. Just a few days after announcing our engagement, Nathaniel started taking me to try on wedding dresses. My mood was complicated. After all, at the beginning, I only saw Nathaniel as a partner for cooperation. I've already died once. Whether there is love or not doesn't seem that important. Getting married, for me, is more of a bond of interests. Moreover, he's handsome, and he's good in bed. Even if we put aside the interests and just talk about sex, he can make me feel pleasurable. But Nathaniel obviously didn't think so. He looked at me as if I were a treasure. His passionate and affectionate eyes were like those of an innocent young man who had just fallen in love. The wedding dress was custom-made for me by a famous designer at great expense. There were more than 30 design drafts. During the fitting, I was distracted, but he was very careful. He also seriously accompanied me to change into the matching suit. After trying on each set, he would take a photo. When I checked my phone at the end, I found that a group that had been silent for half a year suddenly popped up with more than 999 messages. The reason was that Nathaniel, who never spoke in the group, actually sent a series of messages, accompanying Marina to try on wedding dresses. Although there are a lot of things to deal with in the company, Marina acted coquettishly with me. There's no way. Women are like that. Do you have any suitable islands to recommend? I'm going to buy an island for the wedding. Marina said she likes the sea view. This beaded embroidery small train design is just so. Fortunately, the person wearing it is very beautiful. I've already given her the ring. But Marina doesn't seem to like wearing it. She said the diamond is too big and inconvenient to wear. Is it because she thinks the ring I bought is not good? Should I change it? I'm asking for help online. It's urgent. As soon as Nathaniel showed up, the whole group exploded. Before I knew it, the number of messages reached more than 999. Finally, some people even started to send red envelopes and wish us a long and happy marriage. I was a bit stunned. Marina, was he talking about me? Nathaniel, it seemed that he forgot that I was in this group. Finally, when he was about to take another photo and edit the message, I couldn't help but ask teasingly, who is Marina? When did she act coquettishly with you? You said there were a lot of things to deal with in the company. Didn't you say that you were on vacation today and had nothing to do? So you took me to try on wedding dresses. Nathaniel was stunned for a moment and finally realized something. His face turned red, and his expression was awkward, with a hint of shyness. If sister doesn't like it, I won't send these messages anymore. His tone seemed obedient at first, but after careful consideration, there was a bit of a resentful and coquettishly wronged feeling. He had already figured out my preferences. After our engagement, he had been calling me sister. He knew that I liked this. Looking at his bright and burning eyes that seemed to be filled with starlight, I sighed helplessly. Nathaniel, as we agreed before, between you and me, it's a cooperation. I know. He lowered his head and smiled bitterly, his expression full of loneliness. Even the starlight in his eyes seemed to dim. But after a moment of silence, he raised his face again, stood in front of the French window, and lazily looked down at the city. Marina, have you ever had a dream? I had a very real dream. In the dream, you didn't take a fancy to me but to Matthew, and I was foolishly in love with you. I originally wanted to take you back, but seeing how much you liked him and even gave up everything for him, I couldn't bear to disturb you. But in the end, he did something bad to you? So after I woke up, I told myself that I must change that dream. Marina, if you marry me, it doesn't matter if you see me as a partner for cooperation or a tool for revenge. Anyway, in my heart, if I marry you, you are my wife. I stood there, stunned. No wonder the development track of this life has changed a lot. No wonder he interrupted the farce between me and Matthew at the first banquet. No wonder he pushed through the crowd and boldly stuffed that room card into my hand. No wonder when I resisted and trembled, he leaned into my ear and soothed me, telling me not to be afraid. I thought I was fighting alone. It turned out that there was someone who had been clearing the way for me. So, was that really a dream? Or was the dream just a euphemism? Was he afraid of scaring me? So he deliberately made it ambiguous. Only the dead can be reborn. Looking at Nathaniel, I couldn't help but recall the last scene I saw before my soul dissipated. He was covered in blood, his face pale, but he still insisted on avenging me. Nathaniel keenly noticed my slightly red eyes. Why are you crying all of a sudden? Are you tired of trying on so many wedding dresses? How about I take these back, and you can try them on slowly when you have time. Sometimes, being moved and healed only takes a moment. I was too lazy to explain. Just kiss him. I kissed him. When Nathaniel and I were about to leave, Matthew showed up. There were a lot of people in the WeChat group. After Nathaniel sent the photos, many people posted on Moments to send their blessings. Matthew probably saw it too. He actually chased us here. Nathaniel told him to get lost, but he stubbornly looked at me. his eyes red. Marina, I want to talk to you. Nathaniel refused to let him and even wanted to beat Matthew. I sighed and grabbed Nathaniel's raised hand. What are you doing? Do you want to fight? We're getting married soon. Do you want to hold the wedding in the detention center? Nathaniel was speechless for a moment. I patted his hand. Let me go. It's okay. After all, I really needed to end things with Matthew. Nathaniel glared coldly at Matthew, then looked at me and finally compromised. Then I'll watch you from the car. Call me if there's anything. I nodded. Then I followed Matthew to the roadside. It was really cold in winter. In my previous life, it was snowing when I died. I stopped under a street lamp. Matthew was silent for a long time before he said hoarsely, "You look beautiful in the wedding dress." I frowned and said impatiently, "Matthew, did you come to pester me just to say this?" His expression was pained, and his voice trembled. "Marina, I also want to bless you. But I really can't just watch you wear a wedding dress and marry someone else. You clearly should be marrying me." I looked at him mockingly. "Aren't you the one who wants to marry Linda? This time, I won't stop you. You should be happy." "No." He interrupted me in a hurry and even grabbed my hand and slapped it on his face. "Marina, I know I was wrong. Can you hit me? As long as you can vent your anger, you can hit me however you want. As long as you don't marry Nathaniel, I'll work hard to make money." I withdrew my hand in disgust. "Matthew, can you have some self-respect? You were the one who left me abroad, had my legs broken, and got me sexually assaulted and killed. Just because we were reborn doesn't mean you're innocent. I'm not like you. I'm not a masochist. I can't fall in love with someone who played with me and killed me." Matthew was stunned, and tears fell from his eyes. "So, you really don't want me anymore?" I didn't say anything. My indifferent attitude said it all. His face turned pale, and he turned around and coughed. At first, I thought it was the after effect of being abused by Linda. Or maybe it was because it was too cold these days, and he had a bad cold. Until he suddenly bent over in pain and spat out a mouthful of blood. Then I realized that he looked even sicker than when we met a month ago. Thin and haggard. I frowned. "Matthew, what's wrong with you?" As I spoke, I took a step back. I hoped it wasn't some infectious disease. He indifferently wiped the blood from his lips. Seeing me take a step back, his eyes turned red. "Marina, I don't have much time left. I won't bother you for long." He took out a photo on his phone, which was the diagnosis result he took. He was actually in the late stage of lung cancer. I remembered cursing him to die earlier at the banquet. I didn't expect that he really didn't have much time left. I looked at him in silence for a while, and finally, I couldn't help but say two words. "You deserve it." At this moment, it suddenly started to snow in this freezing city. Matthew was wearing a black coat and stood in the snow, coldly mocking himself. "Yes, I deserve it. In my previous life, every second I lost you, I regretted it." When Nathaniel came to settle the